Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. The Bright Lights, written by Lostfall. Jacob sat, staring numbly at the terminal in Outpost Gamma. A post-it note stuck to the side with his list of 6 impossible problems to solve. His mind screaming at him to change the course he was on, feeling a little more than despair. It wasn't clicking, though. Part of him felt that it might actually be for the best if all failed. If the world around him burned, perhaps like a phoenix he would be reborn, or in the ashes at least find respite, redemption that he'd long ago since given up on. It's funny how life can stack on you, both your pride and your regrets, adding up like stones around your neck. In your youth, you dream of growing up and enjoying adventure and freedom. You idolize heroes and dreams of life like you perceive theirs to be. Little do you imagine you face a life of slavery to responsibility and coin. Jacob's mind drifted back to times of home. Jacob was once a soldier, had thought that he was looking at a bright future facing humanity's enemies amongst the stars. He was following a dream from a childhood, looking up at a family of former soldiers. He became an officer and went through some of the most rigorous schools the military offered. Dreamed of a life of honor, excitement, and wonder. He did the training, even served a few exciting years. Then, that fateful day hit. He wasn't injured by an alien weapon, or even in combat. They were doing a basic maneuver, and he had this simple mistake. He didn't see the drop. In a moment, his path in life was rendered as his bones on his left foot shattered. A training accident he never saw coming. Pain that he knew how to deal with, but in that moment his body found a limit. Even after 3 surgeries, he could still feel the crunch of what little cartilage and bone fragments remained with each step. To keep mobility, he would have to take the toes and force the joints to sharply flex, breaking off the bone spurs that formed in the sickening snap. Again feeling the bone-breaking sensation, then instant relief as mobility returned to his joints. Over the next few years, he watched his friends and colleagues die in combat against an alien menace, always in the back of his mind questioning if things would be different if he had been there. As his foot deteriorated, he loathed himself for failing his brothers and sisters in arms. But life moves on, and he adapted to his new life. Life wasn't bad. He had met Jane, the love of his life. They didn't have much, but it was enough. She tempered the damage and self-loathing. At some level, he knew that if the accident had not happened, he wouldn't have met her. But she had never known him at his prime, had never seen him when he could put on an 80-pound ruck and run 12 miles in Earth's normal gravity. Then one day, that life ended. He got a letter from the command informing him that in 30 days he would be discharged due to his injuries, as he was no longer fit to be an officer. He was too ashamed of how he had been injured to even fight it or pursue veterans' benefits. No enemy weapon had done this, just an accident. He watched as everything he had chased his whole life turned to dust in his hands. He was being pushed out into the only life that he knew and into a world he wasn't ready for. In desperation, he sought any job he could find, eventually landing a job as a junior engineer for one of Earth's largest space-based shipyards in the Delta system. The job was literally to take design updates, review them, and update user manuals. Hardly the most exciting, but provided a steady income and medical benefits. He worked hard, ultimately too hard. He and Jane had kids along the way, his family, his only remaining pride in life, quickly darkening. Facing this, he again found himself forced to adapt to this new reality. Through his hard work, he started getting promotions and getting raises. He was climbing the corporate ladder, relying on the many skills he learned as an officer and a leader. But the long hours and the weeks of travel were taking their toll. He was becoming more and more drone-like. To his family, he was becoming a shade, his humor all but lost. He wasn't there for them, dimly aware, but still spiraling as he had from that fateful day. At some point, he awoke briefly from his drone-like state. In a rare moment of clarity, he realized his job was defining him at the cost of his family. He no longer had any friends, long since having lost contact and never developing roots in the communities he moved to. He had colleagues at work who respected him, but none he called a friend. Most were hesitant to get too close to him. He had earned a reputation for brutal efficiency. About the same time, Jane came to him worried. Their daughter had reached their first-level school age and was considered behind her peers and struggling. His wife, who he loved above all, was ready to leave the shadow that was left of him. He knew he had to make a change. If he didn't adapt, he would lose all that mattered most. So Jacob tried. He reached for a reset button, moved his family to the Gamma system, and tried to start over, keeping his priorities right. This saved his marriage, but old habits die hard. Again, another soul-crushing job, toiling endless hours trying to make up for the change in pay and debt incurred in moving across several systems. The job itself, project management within an industrial equipment manufacturing plant, was painful. Constantly, he was asked to provide timelines and costs for projects whose scopes were already beyond what had initially been approved, then told it had to meet unreasonable timelines and with limited resources. When he pointed out one of the three would inevitably give, it was ignored. Unfortunately, when resources and time become fixed in an already efficient system, scope always gives. Then he would be asked to clean up the resulting havoc. Jacob's frustrations continued to grow, getting recognized for what he could do, then punished by senior managers who couldn't handle truthful assessments of their plans. This cycle continued for years, making him numb to his work. Jacob watched his son and daughter both reach school ages in the new star system, hopeful a better school would set them on a good track. Yet to his dismay, they still struggled. Despite his hard work, his debts mounted, and as he tried tutoring, after-school activities, and private music lessons to change their trajectory. There is no pain like watching your children stumble down a path of avoidable pitfalls. Jane was by his side, trying to help, trying to get him to be a better father. Trying to manage his debts, he had cashed out his retirement, pouring his future into preserving his present, but the penalties and fees levied in the Intergalactic Resource Service Group destroyed any gains made. Jane stayed by his side, helping him muscle through the crushing realization that he had made all things worse. Jacob feared his children would never look back at him in wonder and awe over his parenting skills. Life had left him a burnt-out and bitter shell. Anger had himself his one remaining emotion. His weakness and failures constantly pushed to the front of his mind with each step he took. Yet Jane still stood by, helping him calm the rage and keep him from accidentally lashing out against those who didn't deserve it. He could not keep up. Like a drowning man, the tasks needed done at home and the bills needing paid continued to pile up. His house suffered from a lack of attention, constantly being sent away to remote customers, taking him further and further away. His gift of fixing that which others couldn't, more a curse than a blessing. Jane warned him that he was walking into old traps, told him that they'd all missed and loved him. She was trying to draw him back. After a while, Jacob adapted to his struggles in a natural way. He felt the edges of the numbness setting in, his health slowly fading, abs slowly going from a six-pack to a keg. Middle age was creeping in as he watched, his life no longer feeling in his control. Jane was doing her best, but worried about Jacob and the toll the current situation was taking on him. Jacob knew that she worried about him, but only added to his guilt. He had missed his son's cross-country again, because he couldn't get back from work in time. She tried to gently remind him how quickly his kids were growing up, a fact he was all too aware of. Her gentle reminders hitting the already tender lashes he gave himself, hating himself for his perceived failures yet again. Again, he had been too honest and was forced into a new role. The company valued his ability to fix issues, but ignored his ability to prevent them. In warning of pitfalls they were creating, he had upset another corporate vice president. So he had been shoved back into a glass box, to be broken at the next emergency. Jane, ever the bright light, stood by his side, trying to pull him towards the happiness he could no longer feel. Now, Jacob sat, staring at his terminal and his yellow sticky note. 3 days prior, he had been given his impossible task list. 6 items whose only course of action was to put them on equipment and experiment for days until the solution was found. He wasn't the first to try either, but that was now his job. Again, he must adapt. It took half a day to line up the materials needed for all 6 tasks, then a day and a half meeting with people who wanted bulletproof solutions and status updates. Now, he had 2 days to wait, with only the occasional call wanting to know why he hadn't progressed to answers. His mind wondered. Could a hobby break this funk? He had already tried wood carving, music, sports, gaming, VR, and even writing. All just ended up being another escape from the reality he lived in. In the end, all leaving him, despite himself, more for what he neglected. This was an adaptation that he could not break. Jane was trying to break his funk. She encouraged him to do new things, to find his light, as he continued to descend into darkness. His world slowly became grey, despite the things that he could be happy and thankful for. All he could feel was worry and guilt. Guilt that he had let this happen. There were nights he didn't dare speak of where he would sit and hold his dog tags trying to fight himself. That belief that if he could restore some of that man he used to be, the only one who could have taken on any world. Other days and nights where he reached for his ring, a token of his days as an officer, and wondered why he had failed so badly. In darkness, he cried to let out the pain, of feeling helpless as he watched his offspring struggle, feeling broken but scared to show to Jane, afraid of losing that last lights in his life. Like a soldier, he trudged on. See, Jacob loved his wife and his kids. He only wanted to see them do better than he himself had. In his rush to provide monetarily, he sacrificed friendships. In his drive to excel, he lost community. In his wishing for more, he came to the brink of losing it all. And standing there looking down into the abyss, 3 souls held him back. The last stars in his night sky. Knowing this, Jacob numbly went back to the list. For now, they needed the job and benefits. Tonight, he would send out more applications, vainly hoping the next would be different than the current. Yet knowing some things don't change, he would adapt again as was needed to protect the stars in his life. At the end of his shift, he closed his terminal and slowly walked to the aircar on Deck G. After an hour of relentless stop-and-go traffic, he was home. The highlight of his day was hugs from the young kids as he came in, then a hug and a kiss from Jane as she asked how his day was. And he once again utters, "It was okay." Jacob was there at the next cross-country meet to cheer on his son. It's funny how they say that your darkest hour there will come a light. For Jacob, the light stood beside him, even in the dark, keeping him going. He never surrendered to the despair and just gave up. It is in some way a galactic irony that while we worship our heroes, most actually accomplish very little in the galaxy, besides becoming a fascinating story of hope. That hope helps keep the real soldiers of advancing forward, inspires the young, and lifts morale. The real heroes of advancement being the unsung fathers, mothers, wives, and husbands laboring under the heavy yoke of responsibility to families to provide for their needs. Well, Jacob felt miserable. His technical skills had helped leap spacecraft design ahead a full generation. Many new pieces of industrial equipment were brought to the market under his guidance, which increased productivity and efficiency. It was his watchful eye, along with others like him, that drove the evolution and produced the items needed to keep the economy moving. He was valuable to this company, as he routinely saved them millions, yet felt hollow and worthless. In the big picture, though, those items did not matter next to his only light. The muse which supported him through his own self-deprecating thoughts and perceived failings. That love that endured his long hours and tried to sustain him through his own mental and physical damage. The love that kept the broken soldier moving, no longer in rank with his brothers and sisters, but still on a mission. Ever forward, ever adapting to protect that which he loved. Jacob would bear his burden, not out of spite, anger, heroism, or strength, but out of a too little valued, unseen love. A love for the lights of his life. And in doing so, would continue to drive humanity forward. as millions before him and around him had. Long after he is gone, millions more to follow undoubtedly would be as well. In slogging through the drudgery of normal life, he brightens the lives of those he cares for, and ultimately his own. When the other species of the galaxy look at humanity, the constant march forward always astonishes them. Humanity has never sat in only one place, never been content. They often look at human drive, or try to study human individuals out of context. One of the things in the galaxy almost always overlooked by others that defines our species is our ability to love others more than ourselves. From the strength of that love, all other emotion is born. Other species may know hate, but none know it stronger than any who've known love. Evolving on a world of death, that love is what drives us to protect others, even at the cost of our own lives. Our love is not limited to just those of our family, though. Some love their religion, money, objects, and pets with the same intensity as others do their love. This is both our strength and our weakness. For every love like Jacob and Jane, another found their love on something that fails them and can destroy them. With the wrong partner, Jacob could be there, a crumbling shell. Jane is what sustains and drives him. Humans are not the most powerful, most gifted, cleverest, or even dangerous amongst the stars. We are different because of how we push ourselves well past the limits that nature defines, create a future that doesn't exist, and fight with a ferocity unmatched for those we love. A final gift from a world that taught it to us by trying to take it all from us. We worship the bright lights in the dark galaxy that we constantly adapt to be with and provide for. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons: Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.